Hello, React Native developers. What is going on? William here, recording from beautiful Zürich, Switzerland. This afternoon, I'm joined with Adem Bilican. Adem and I have a lot in common, we can say, right?
Indeed, yeah.
Fellow Frenchman, doing React Native, living in Zürich,
Yes.
as an independent developer.
True.
So I really wanted you to have you on the channel. Maybe can you introduce yourself quickly?
Sure, with pleasure. Well, first of all, thanks for having me on your channel. It's a big pleasure. A big fan of what you've been doing so far. It's really cool following all your adventures and being here today. It's an honor for me. Thank you. So yeah, my name is Adem and I'm from France, and I moved to Switzerland in 2011 for my studies. Originally, I studied bioinformatics, so I came here for my PhD. And since last year, March, I am an independent app developer focusing on mobile app development and mostly React Native.
So how do you go from bioinformatics to React Native?
Yeah, okay. I got that question quite often. So, well, in a sense, there is still informatics in bioinformatics. So I always worked in front of a computer. I mean, the idea is to do some biological data analysis, but we don't do anything in the lab. We are all day long in front of our computer and we receive data from the biologist working on the lab. And we write some scripts, usually in Python, Perl, or R programming languages to analyze this data. So I always had to write some code anyway, even if it's for biological related data, it was still some code.
Okay.
Yeah. And just out of curiosity, I always had some side projects going on. Even during my school, when I was at school, I always had I was doing a website or small projects, but I always had something on the side.
Okay.
Like my geeky side, if I can say.
So is that what help you to do the leap as an independent? Because maybe since you were already doing like side projects and so on, you already had some confidence that you could work as an independent, or did you do the move?
Yes, definitely. No, that was very helpful in the sense that I knew that I could also make some money out of this project, and also how much money I can make, because if the idea was just to take a jump without even, this was kind of a trial for me, all these years working on several side projects and like extra money at the end of the month. But they were not really project that's required like 100% of my time. It was really small websites or also small mobile applications at the time, but very small scale. But it was also it also gave me a lot of confidence in the future. And at that point, I knew that I wanted to do something on my own, and it helped a lot, as you said, all the small projects.
So you already had quite some experience with React Native?
No, it started like 2 years ago. Like when first independent, I first started with native programming.
Okay.
So I did some small apps in Objective-C and Java for Android. But React Native, I really started when I was completely independent.
Okay.
Like when I had a concrete project with React Native, that's when I really started using React Native.
I think that's so awesome, because I have zero experience with the native side.
Mm-hmm.
But coming as a native developer for both Android and iOS, if you do React Native development, I feel like you have like some really powerful tools on your toolbed, like knowing that you can go on the native side. And
definitely. No, it helps a lot. And so I am coming from the native side, and most of the projects, the React Native projects I'm working on now, they all have some links to native code. So at the moment, I think I have only one small project that is 100% React Native, so only JavaScript, mostly JavaScript. But then the two other projects I'm working on as a freelancer consultant, that's where I also deal with a lot of native code, native libraries, and communication between native and React Native.
Cool. And actually, we are here in somewhat special place. Where are we?
Yes. So we are right now at Trust Square, which we call a blockchain hub, and they are here. So it's like 3 floors building, and a lot of big companies working on blockchain are located here. So not only mobile, but blockchain in general, be it in education, research, and companies or big groups that are involved in the blockchain technology are located here. So we know in Switzerland, Zug is well known for being like the crypto valley.
Crypto valley, yeah.
But now with Trust Square, Zurich is also catching up slowly with all these big names here in Trust Square.
And so Zug is a canton in Switzerland, which is 20 minutes away from Zurich, basically.
Yeah.
And this hub is also in a special, so it's a special place, but it's also located in a special place in Zurich, right?
Yes.
Because we're at the beginning of Bahnhofstrasse,
yes.
which is, I guess, if you're as a Frenchman, the reference would be the Champs-Élysées of France, indeed, Switzerland. Yes. I don't know what other analogy.
True. No, I think that was perfect. That was perfect. As you said, I mean, like we just 2 minutes away from the big names. Yes. I don't know if we should give names, but like big expensive brands are just located right here.
Exactly, so, that's where they all are. Yeah. And you've heard the story about Oprah Winfrey doing her shopping in Bahnhofstrasse.
Ah, no, I didn't know that.
I'm not sure. So I'm not sure how true this is, but she said, I heard this story that she was maybe at Louis Vuitton or something, and she was denied access to the shop. That was here in Bahnhofstrasse. Yeah. I'm not sure. To me, it's a bit surprising knowing Swiss culture, but I thought it was like a funny story when
maybe kind of a joke or in between something. Yeah,
yes, absolutely.
Could be.
And actually, Johnny Berger was on the channel already.
Yep.
He's also having a desk here, right? So we need to say hello after this recording.
We'll go
have coffee
say hi. Yeah, sure.
And you follow his Twitter. I love his Twitter. I think it's hilarious.
Definitely.
And apparently he has some exciting
it
stuff
is.
into
Yeah,
pipeline,
today he said something like he's working on something interesting. So we will catch him up before he share with everybody. So
So what's your connection with crypto? Because this is a crypto hub.
Yes. So it all started like I think 8-9 years ago when I was just following a French blog. Technical blog. I mean, they were just blogging about technical things, and they had a small banner on the side like we accept donation in Bitcoin. And at the time, I just read, but for me it was like geek money. I mean, I don't consider myself as a geek. I have a geeky side, but it's not that strong. I mean, and I just read Bitcoin, blockchain. I just heard the name, just read it briefly, and then it was coming a bit more often. With time and the price, the increase, the crazy time of Bitcoin, then I started to learn a bit more about the technology, the blockchain itself. So what is a blockchain, when it is really helpful and when it is not compared to a normal database. And I really wanted to make the jump into a concrete project using blockchain. And that's when I joined the QRL, the Quantum Resistant Ledger project, which is a blockchain project with their own blockchain. And I am now working with them to develop the mobile wallet of that project. So it was really my first concrete step into blockchain plus React Native combined. So now the first version of the wallet is available on the app stores, and we are now working on the second version that we will probably release soon.
Cool. And so I find, if you do React Native, of course, you can touch to a lot of different vertical. It can be fitness, e-commerce, and so on.
Yeah.
The vertical of cryptocurrencies, I find it to be especially interesting with React Native, because here there's really some extra opportunities, because this field, can I say it's still emerging, kind of, right? And it's still not a mainstream.
Yes.
And so I find it really interesting because here there's really an opportunity to use innovation in building mobile apps and so on to really build incredible user experiences.
True. And it's like everybody in the blockchain in the blockchain domain, they're talking about this mass adoption. So what we dream is one day that everybody is using the blockchain even without realizing that they're using the blockchain, like a social media using the blockchain, but you don't have to know that you're using the blockchain. You just know that it's something secure and your data is secure and it's only for yourself. There is no marketing behind with your data. And I believe that this mass adoption will go through the mobile platforms. I mean, that's the platform we are using every day, every morning, every evenings. And as you said, so there are a lot of opportunities here in the blockchain technology to make it more user-friendly, and therefore use tools like React Native and reach more people directly with mobile platforms.
Yes.
True.
Because, first of all, I guess the app needs to be extremely secure.
Yeah.
And so I guess this is your field of expertise, especially coming from the native side, because I guess here you need, but you will tell me, but
yes,
probably you
sure.
need to go native.
Yeah, definitely.
And then, so the app needs to be secure, but then also the app needs to feel secure and feel, so, and this means snappy user experiences. Everything needs to be completely spotless.
Loading and all these temporary interfaces.
Completely seamless.
Yeah, definitely. Because it's still, I mean, people are now talking more and more about Bitcoin in general. And most of the people, I don't know how many people make the link between Bitcoin and blockchain. But this is two different things. Kind of Bitcoin is the cryptocurrency itself and the project, but blockchain is something different. You can use blockchain for many other things. I mean, today the most well-known use case is cryptocurrency, but you can also use it for other tools like social media or timestamping, these kind of things also, to have a database, immutable database that you cannot touch, you cannot modify, and you have a trace of what happened so far.
Okay.
So, but again, as you said, it's this interface has to be really sleek, and it has to be clean, and it has to be really to give confidence. Because even if it's only for a mobile wallet, you're putting some money there. It's like a bank. I mean, if you have some banking app online on your mobile, you want it to be like clear and clean and something that you can, which gives you some trust. Yeah, definitely.
And on the secure, because the user that's what we do on the channel.
Yes.
Can it be done in React Native
Sure.
and so on. But about the security, what kind, if you want to build a React Native app which connects to a blockchain, has some sort of relationship with a blockchain, what kind of security consideration do you need to?
It depends on what you save in the user's smartphone, because communicating with a blockchain is quite easy. You have different protocols. So you have the gRPC, which is JSON RPC, which is a communication mechanism that you can talk to the blockchain and get some data, or gRPC from Google RPC, or you can also communicate with some simple APIs, REST API, for example. But then if you, for example, are working on a mobile wallet and you want to save some data on the user's smartphone, then depending on the platform, for example, for iOS, you can use the keychain and then maybe concentrate on Touch ID, Face ID, kind of additional security. And on Android, there is nothing like very similar to the keychain, but there is shared preferences, which is not encrypted. So there, you need also to do some manual encryption to save data securely on the phone. Whereas on iOS, it's a bit easier because the keychain is supposed to be not accessible by any other apps. You cannot communicate between apps, except if you say so. Otherwise, it's really a secure enclave, and you can put some sensitive data there.
Okay. So is that where native modules come in? Oh.
It's even more. So this is one tiny part of it, I would say. So
Okay.
why I'm using a lot native code is because these blockchain projects, they have their own libraries. So you have two big projects, Bitcoin and Ethereum. Some other projects are using Bitcoin and Ethereum blockchain. So that's easy. You can use their existing JavaScript libraries for Bitcoin and Ethereum. So you can use them. Although there are some tricky parts, we also talked briefly about it, about some Node.js modules that are not as is available for React Native, for example, Bcrypt.
Yes.
But you can play a bit with it. So with a bit of work, you can make it work for React Native. But for example, the Curl project or another project, Elastos, I'm working on, they have their own blockchain, which means they wrote the code for the node and all the functions they need, usually in a low-level programming language, C or C++. And the idea here is to access these functions the C++ functions from JavaScript, from React Native. So how it works, we have the native modules library in React Native. So you can communicate between JavaScript and Objective-C or JavaScript and Java for Android. That's one layer. And then you have an additional layer because here the original code is in C++, right? So what you do, let's take the example of iOS. It's a bit easier in iOS. You have React Native calling Objective-C, calling C++, and then coming back. In iOS, you can have this combination of Objective-C and C++. It's called Objective-C++. So basically, when you have your .m files, if you name them .mm instead of .m, it automatically switches to Objective-C++, which is good because there you can use C++ variables directly. So that's the easy part. For Android, it gets a bit tricky because you can communicate from JavaScript to Java between these two with the native modules.
And then you need GNI.
And then you need GNI to communicate with C++. And there it gets a bit tricky because with GNI you have different kinds of variables. You have gstring, int, and then you have the string and int on C++, and then you come back. So it's a long way to go to C++ and then to come back to JavaScript. So it's a bit tricky on Android than it's compared to iOS.
But so so if I understand correctly, this blockchain, they only have a client library in C++?
So originally that's the main code they have. Most of them, depending on how big the project is, in the long term they end up with some JavaScript libraries. Yeah, definitely. But at the beginning, to put more efforts in the core functionalities, to have it stable and functional, properly functional, they usually start with C++. These days, switching a bit to Go and Rust are also very common these days for blockchain. But usually, you don't think of JavaScript right away. The first is you really want to get your node running properly, communicating properly, and then in the long term, you might end up with some JavaScript libraries. But usually at the beginning, no.
Okay.
So you just grab these libraries. With CMake, you can kind of build them for iOS and Android, and then you import them in your React Native project and you write the bridges there.
Cool.
Yeah.
So I have zero experience with native side of React Native, and so to me it looks pretty scary. Am I right to be scared?
I don't know.
I'll take it as a yes.
Yes, okay, a bit. It's just I feel like it was not that complicated for me in a sense that I'm coming from the other way, so native to React Native, so the communication was a bit easier. But I think it would have been quite difficult if I never touched Java or Objective-C before. Yeah, definitely. Because even simple bridging modules, like just even JavaScript to Objective-C or JavaScript to Java can be sometimes a bit tricky. And then here you have an extra layer with C++. So sometimes it's tricky to transfer even simple variables between these different programming languages.
Yes.
Like you have standard for string and integers, it's fine. But if you need an arrays of a specific type, then it gets a bit tricky. And it's even more tricky if you need, so when you deal with this blockchain, you have all these hexseed and binary formats. And then you kind of need to convert a lot even before transferring. So you have a conversion, then transfer, then conversion, transfer back conversion. It's a bit, there is no simple way to go back and forth easily. But in the end, it's just a learning process. Okay. So there is nothing to be to have fear of. No, it's okay.
And one thing I noticed, so I'd be curious about your setup because so usually if you, let's say you have a React project with some native modules, you can maybe do some modifications on the native code. You rebuild on iOS, on Android, test. Okay, it works. It seems to work pretty well, but I'm really curious what happens if this code you're modifying is in your node modules essentially, but then maybe you want to commit these changes on a separate repo, right? It's a separate package. I assume it is, right?
Yes, it is.
And so how do you deal with that? Do you use Link, npm link, but I'm not sure if it works very well with React Native. What's your experience with this?
Yeah, I think it's a bit different in the sense that usually what happened is these libraries, they have their own GitHub repositories. So we work a lot with GitHub. The projects I'm involved in, they're all open sources.
Yeah.
And so I just add this library as a submodule to the React Native project.
Okay.
And I build everything within there. So I don't touch the node modules or the npm link at all, because the very first step is to build this library for iOS and Android first, and then you import it to your Xcode React Native project. So I never tried automatic linking there. I usually do it manually because it's not a proper node package. It's really raw library, and you just need to import the library, and then you specify your header files, the path to your header files, and the path to your library in Xcode, so that you can access these functions. And it's a bit different in Android, where you have to work with the Gradle file, Gradle settings.
And since you have experience in both the Android and the iOS side, is there one which you find better?
Yeah, I have a preference.
Okay.
Definitely iOS.
Definitely
iOS. Just maybe it's because of my knowledge or the experience I had so far. But I find somehow Android with the Gradle system a bit more difficult than iOS. And with iOS, the fact that you could use this Objective-C++ combination, it's just amazing. I mean, within your Objective-C functions, you just use C++ as is, like really directly within. Whereas with Java, when you have this GNI, you have specific functions for GNI that you have to define, which calls C++ functions, and in between, you need to be very careful with naming conventions, and it gets really tricky. Whereas with iOS, you can almost use the library, the C++ library as is, once it's compiled for iOS.
Cool.
And I also like more the user experience on iOS.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. And so if you were to give one advice to someone who needs to, like me, basically, who needs to get started with native code in React Native, what would you say?
I really like the very simple example they have on the React Native website. You know, they have, I think for Android, they have a toast example, you know, this toast menu for Android. And they have, I think, a calendar example for iOS, which is pretty good. And it gives you already a first idea of how to communicate, what kind of data parameters you pass in between. But if you want to go further, there are a lot of tutorials. And usually these have to deal with some image processing libraries. Somehow this is very common. And you can grab one of these. If you just Google native image processing library to React Native, there are a lot of good tutorials specifically for image processing, because they are very powerful libraries, native libraries for this specific image processing part, and there are very nice tutorial about how to implement them and include them in your React Native project. But then it depends also on, I just had that during high school, I had very simple C++ basic knowledge, but we didn't do much. And then it's a lot of playing around and Stack Overflow, Googling, and really try to start with a simple function. Just try to pass a simple string from C++ to JavaScript. Just for example, when you press the button on React Native, make it print something in the console, and from there you can go further away very easily, I would say.
But what I remember from my experience with C++ was also a lot of, running background and checking for memory leaks and so on. So then here it's, I guess, because you have this you do it in a context with so many layers, it gets a bit more tricky to...
I'm sure it is, but I never had an issue with that side so far, because these issues are taken into account in the core lib itself.
Okay, yeah.
So I know that here I'm just calling a simple function.
Yes.
And in the end I can just empty the memory, or whenever I quit the app,
There's
there is nothing to keep
crazy,
really track and nothing crazy happening.
Cool.
Yeah. No, I'm happy I didn't have to touch that side yet.
So here maybe, so there is React Native developers watching this, and some of them may or may not have experience with cryptocurrencies. And hopefully there is some people from the cryptocurrency world who are watching this and maybe have not so much experience with React Native.
Yeah.
Could you tell me, like, what is the thing you find the most exciting at the moment for you in the React Native space, and the thing you find the most exciting at the moment in the crypto space?
Okay, so React Native first. I think it's an awesome framework. It's really cool. I mean, the way you can get this app really soon just out there. I just released an app last week, and something I made for my wife. She just needed an app to calculate the employee's working time. So the idea is to give a start time, an end time, and a break, a pause, a duration. And in the end, you just get how many hours this employee worked. And I did it in almost 1 day. And the app is in the App Store now. She is using it, and I hope it will be available and helpful for other people as well. So that's really, really powerful.
So that was done using Expo and...
Not even
sorry,
just React Native in it.
Boom.
Awesome project. I think that's the default name they use in the example, and just from there, it's just everything is in the app.js file, just one JS file, and everything is there. It's amazing, and this is something that was not possible like a few years ago. I remember starting with any app like iOS or Android, it would take a few days just to get ready, to have your tools and to have a proper version running on the simulator. Whereas here we're talking in a matter of minutes.
Yes.
That's really cool.
That's insane, yeah.
Yeah. And I know the team, they are getting so active these last few weeks. It's impressive. I remember on Twitter, it was something like, it was impressive. The last few weeks, they had even a weekly or a monthly report how many issues they closed and how fast they progressed. This is really cool.
Yes.
This is pretty
the way they manage GitHub is completely insane.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It is. I don't know how they are doing
yes.
it, but such a big project and really well maintained. It's rare open source project like this one, and that's really cool. And I know there are some alternatives coming. I tried a few, but for me today, there is nothing better than React Native for a hybrid app. Just think of all the JavaScript community you have around and all the packages, node packages you can already use. It's impressive. I mean, just npm install and you have whatever you want there, like moment for dates and times, this kind of small things that really helps you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So it's interesting you mentioned that, because so I've been watching Flutter, and I haven't played with it personally, but on paper and like I watch the talks and so on, and the technology looks absolutely awesome.
Yeah.
And I've seen some web demos which also I was so impressed, and also it seems to evolve so fast. But one thing you just mentioned with JavaScript is so far, since more than 30 years, JavaScript hasn't lost any battles.
Right.
And to me, it would be so surprising that battle that it will lose is on this native mobile stuff, where it seems to be actually quite a good fit.
Yeah.
So we'll see. But
I completely agree. And it's like, it started with front end for simple animations, and now you have it in the back end on mobile, everywhere. And that's what makes it really strong. You can find a solution for JavaScript whenever you really want it. I also checked quickly Flutter, but I'm just not afraid, but I don't see any reason for me today to make the switch, because here I'm using a programming language I already know. I know how to communicate with native libraries. This is something I need every day for my work, so this is very important for me. And in terms of UI UX, I have everything. Look at these amazing animations you're doing with React Native. Come on, it's impressive. So I think it's really, really cool. We're using something really cool as a technology today.
And one thing, with TypeScript also now, because people used to, and they have a point. So some people say, because TypeScript is covering also all the backward compatibility, all the baggage from JavaScript and so on, you cannot have a strongly typed language like you would do in Dart. And I used to think, you are kind of right. But now, like, following the novelties and the new features of TypeScript, and I find it mind-blowing. They still manage to to really cover more use cases and the type system to be more and more powerful.
Yeah,
It's absolutely insane how advanced it's becoming. So
no, it is. It's like, I mean, every day you think of switching or, you know, think of an alternative. After a few minutes, like, no, it doesn't make sense. I mean, come on, I have everything. It's even better. It's even getting better and better every day. Why would I switch?
Yeah.
So it's like now I'm really happy to have React Native on my tool belt. Really,
Yeah.
it's really cool. And then you asked the same question for the blockchain technology. I really think it's something we will use more and more in the future. It's just something too technical these days. Even legally speaking, it can be sometimes very difficult. You know, these days we're using mostly blockchain for cryptocurrencies, and then you're talking about money, you're talking about legislation. It gets quite difficult. But I think it was 2 weeks ago, 2 big projects got an official approval from FINMA as a bank, so they're using cryptocurrencies and they will be officially considered like a bank in Switzerland. And Switzerland is really, we have the chance to be here working on the blockchain technology, because I think it's really one of the best place to be at the moment. It's a very open place to work on blockchain, and progress is going really, really fast here. Then I would hope, of course, to see blockchain used in more than cryptocurrencies, but this is somehow tricky because we are at the point where everybody wants to use the blockchain. Just the key blockchain, it's something like you put blockchain somewhere, you know, it's like sometimes at some point it was like AI, ML, you just put ML somewhere and you know that it's going to attract some attention. But here what I like the most is like, if there is a sentence, you're reading a sentence about a blockchain project, and every time you see blockchain, if you can replace it with database, then you don't need the blockchain. I mean, blockchain is something very specific. Okay, it can be considered as a database, but it's more than a database, and we don't need blockchain for every single project that you can think.
Yes, blockchain is decentralized trust.
Yeah.
And I've heard here in Switzerland, I hear a lot of people talking about blockchain, and what they mean is distributed database. And they absolutely don't need the distributed trust.
Yeah.
But because for them it's new, because maybe in their vertical they're barely digital, and then suddenly you're talking about this distributed digital solution, and they're like, oh, that's blockchain.
Yeah.
But the trust is not needed actually.
No, it's true, definitely. I mean, it's more for some projects, more, you know, it's sexy to have blockchain in there, and it's easy to really, I mean, whatever you do with a database, you can do it with a blockchain, but it doesn't mean you need blockchain for that specific project. I mean, I believe that it can be helpful in many, many parts of our daily lives, be it even social media. I don't mean to have a social media only using the blockchain, but the social part of a social media can use blockchain, and part of anything, even a photo app can use a blockchain part of it just for timestamping and having something on the blockchain that this photo, this image really belongs to you, because you can prove it at that time of at this point of time I just put it in the blockchain, it's mine, you can check with the hash. And I mean, it can be helpful in many, many projects, but it doesn't mean that all the projects need to use the blockchain. But it's something really impressive. I mean, like if you go back to 2009 and the paper, and it's even at the time, it's like something, wow, I mean, how did someone write something like this at the time? And then these days it's getting more and more common to have it, so you can pay in a lot of places, even here in Switzerland. There is a big hotel, I don't remember the name, but now you can pay there, and you can even buy your Ferrari and Lambo with Bitcoin here in Switzerland. So yeah. If you
finally,
have enough,
you can have a Lambo. Finally.
Exactly.
Okay, good to know then.
Voilà, good. Yeah, that's
cool.
Correct.
But so yeah, definitely an opportunity with React Native to build these apps that feel like mainstream app, but that are leveraging blockchain.
Yes, definitely. And there are more and more companies into the blockchain sphere that are using actually React Native. Even Ledger is producing some hardware wallets. The Ledger Nano S, Ledger Nano X, they are known for these hardware wallets. They have a mobile app, and they are using React Native for their mobile app, which is Ledger Live, where you can communicate with your Ledger, and you have your crypto portfolio on your mobile. So it's secure, and you have all the blockchain layer, the crypto. It's not properly a blockchain project, but you have all the cryptocurrencies layered there, and they're using React Native, and there are also other big projects that are using React Native in the blockchain community. So I think it's more than, I know some people don't like React Native. There are pure native part, and there are some people pure React Native. But I don't think it has to be a fight. It just both has their advantages and some disadvantages. But React Native is definitely not a quick and dirty solution, I would say. There are a lot of production apps there, and that feel natives, and that they just work well, and they're made in React Native. And at the end of the day, the end user doesn't care about if you used Objective-C or if you use JavaScript to make this app.
You want something awesome.
Exactly, awesome and helpful. That's it.
Yes.
That's it.
Perfect. Yeah. Well said.
Yeah.
And so, Adem, how people can find you?
Sure. So I have my own company here in Switzerland. It's called Cansulting. So it's like consulting, but with an A instead of an O. It's a gameplay with my family name.
And
yes, we can. And
also.
My family name, which is Bilican.
Yeah,
so
Bilican,
it's a bit of a mix. From there, or also directly via email, ademcan@ademcan.net. And I'm also trying to be active on different social medias, Twitter, Instagram. But yeah, I'm open to any collaborations and really willing to talk about projects. Always really interested with any kind of project. So I'm open to this kind of communications. Sure.
All right. That's awesome.
Cool.
Adem, thank you so much for making
Thank
the
you,
time
William.
today.
Thanks for having me and the great work. Thanks a lot. Thank you very much.
All right, guys. See you.
Bye guys.